All right, here we go. Thursday. Tomorrow's Friday. Excellent. A short week here. So here we go. We're going to look at this problem. Remember, we want to find that variable. There it is. These are the numbers we're going to work with. Our first thing that we're going to look at is distribute. Remember, distribute, combine like terms, remove the extra variable, add, subtract, multiply, divide. Easiest way to remember that. And of course, when we talk about those last three, it's what is to the variable. At this particular point, I'm going to split this in half. We do want to distribute because we find the parentheses and we see there's parentheses. That means multiplication. There are two terms in the inside, so we're going to distribute that 8 to each term on the inside. So we're only going to look at that 8 times 5, which is 40. And we see that together they have 1x, so you want to make sure you put an x on it. Then we're going to do the 1 times that negative 1. See, if I cover up that 5x, it's 8 times negative 1, which is negative 8. They do not have an x together. The x is on the 5, so we don't put an x on there. We're going to bring down that 112 and the equal sign, and we kind of forget about all that right up top. It's gone. We don't worry about it. Those numbers are dead to us. We don't care. Well, we cannot combine like terms because there's nothing over here you can combine. There's nothing over here you can combine. Remember, we did that earlier in the year. That 8 cannot go with that 40 because that 40 has an x, and this one does not have an x, therefore they're not like terms. There is no variable on this side, so there's no extra variable. So we're going to go to that add subtract. Well, the 40 is attached to the x, so that means multiplication. That's 40 times x. So we're going to look at this minus 8, and we're going to add 8. Switch of color here. Add 8 to both sides of the equation. When we get to those last 3 steps, what happens on one side happens on the other. We have to keep it balanced. Our minus 8 and plus 8 are opposites. They become 0. 0 plus negative or plus 40x is just 40x. So we just say these are gone. All right, 112 plus 8 is 120. And we go to our very last step. Our very last step is always going to be that, because we're going to try to get rid of fractions here. So primarily, our last step is always going to be the division. And the reason is because this is multiplication in here. 40 times x, so the opposite of times is divide, and we use that 40. Remember, we always use the numbers that are on this side where the variable is, not the 120. Okay? So our 40s now are opposite operations. They're multiplication and divide. And we take 120 divided by 40, and we get what? 3. Hopefully you got that. If not, pause it, rewind it, go through it again. Very simple, distribute. You'll get to this part, get rid of what's added or subtracted, get rid of what's multiplied, and there's no combined like terms. There is no extra variable. And I even tell you on this these are 3-step equations. So you should understand that, and if there's no 3-step equation, if it's 3-step equation, then 2 of the steps are going to be gone out of the 5. Once again, we're going to look at this. Our first step is distribute. Well, can we distribute? Yes, we can. Right here are the parentheses. We are going to distribute that 5 to that 6. So we have 5 times 6, which is 30. Together they have 1x, so it's x1. We're going to do this one. So 5 times negative 6, which is negative 30, no x. Bring down everything else and forget about the top. We're going to look at this one. This side of the equation, not this side. This side does not have a variable. Well, let's think about it. Can we distribute here? Because that's the second step. No, we can't distribute here because this 30 doesn't have an x and this 30 has an x. They're not together. And there's nothing to combine here, so we skip combine. Is there an extra variable? There's a variable here, but no variable there, so we skip that step. We move on to what's added or subtracted. That 30 is multiplied to the x because they are right next to each other, but this is minus 30, so we're going to go ahead and add 30 to both sides of the equation. These opposite operations disappear. We're left with that 30x, it's a terrible 3. And we have negative 240 plus 30 is negative 210. Well, our final step is remove what's multiplied or divided. Well, that 30 is multiplied to that x. So we're going to go ahead and divide by the 30. We don't use the 210. We don't use the 240. We're not going to do those on both sides because there's no variable over here. You only work with these numbers. Our 30s are opposite operations because it's multiplication and division. We're left with just the x. And negative 210 divided by 30 is, what is it, negative 7? Negative 7. Remember, this is not about the numbers. If you notice, number 1, we distributed, no combined, no extra variable, then we added, subtracted, multiplied, or divided. It's the same process, doesn't matter about the numbers. And you know what? We did exactly the same thing here. We distributed, there was no combined like terms, no extra variable. We added, subtracted, we multiplied, divided. And it's going to be the same on the next, on 3 and 4. It's the process, not the numbers. The process is always the same. So once you get to understand that, you're going to understand how to do equations. So let's look at this one. And we're going to look on this side with the variable. And our first step is to simplify, is to distribute. So we're going to distribute that 8 to the 5. No x, there we go. 8 times 5 is 40. Then we're going to do that 8 times negative 6x. Well, 8 times negative 6 is negative 48, and they have an x together, so you put an x on it. Bring everything else down, forget about everything above the line. We're looking down here. There's nothing to combine here. This has an x, that doesn't have an x, can't combine it. We look on the other side, there's nothing here to even try to combine. There's no extra variable, there's no variable here. If we had a variable on both sides, we'd have to get rid of one, but there isn't one, and we'll get to that later. So we look to see what is added or subtracted to the variable. Well, that negative 48 is attached right there to the x, that means multiplication, so it's this 40. So since we know we look at the front, it's plus 40, we're going to subtract 40 from both sides of the equation. Our opposite operations, our plus and minus 40s, are gone. We bring down everything, which is the negative 48x. Some of you forget about that negative. Remember, it's everything outside the circle comes down, so don't forget it. And negative 296 minus 40 should be 336, negative 336, I believe. And the final step then is that division part. That's always going to be the last part. We're going to try to get rid of all fractions if there are any fractions in them. So 90% of the time, you're always going to end up dividing here. When you have a fraction, then you're talking about, you know, the division over it. Then you're talking about multiplying. But here we're going to divide. So we divide by the exact number in front of the x, which is negative 48. Don't do 48. 48 will give you negative 1, and we don't want that. So our opposite operations, because it's multiplication and division, they are gone. That leaves us with just the x. And negative 336 divided by negative 48 is 7. It is? Okay, good. Now, if you need that, rewind it. Is anybody here? Everybody's got that down? Here? No? Need a second? You got it? Good. All right. So number 4. So once again, go ahead and split everything out. I'm going to go through this one faster, so make sure you follow along. We're going to distribute because there's the parentheses. That's our first step, is distribute. So we're going to distribute the 3 times 7, which is 21. It has an x together, so we do that. Now we're going to do 3 times negative 7, which is negative 21, but they do not have an x, so they're a variable. Then we just bring everything else down. Forget about everything at the top. It's gone. There's nothing to combine here or here. There is no extra variable over here. So then we're looking at what's added or subtracted to the x. That 21 is multiplied to the x. This one is subtracted to the x. So we're looking at this minus 21. So we're going to add 21 to both sides. Our opposite operations disappear. We're left with 21x and negative 168 plus 21. We got 7, 4, negative 147. Yes? Anybody? Anybody? Bueller? Bueller? I think that's right. So then we come to our final step, which is the multiplication division part, but we're going to divide. We divide by exactly the number that's in front of the x. That number exactly that's in front of the x. And we go ahead and know that our opposite operations, times and divide, they disappear. We're left with just the x. And negative 147 divided by 21 should be what? Negative 7? Yep, that's what it is. All right. If you have any questions, email me, or I should be on today, right as close as I possibly can to 150. So I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.